Alrighty, everybody. This is All Star Productions, and this is day 20 of the WMMA6 Developers Journal, the grand finale, the big one, the entry that has more content than almost all the other previous days combined. If the earlier days were warm-ups, today is the full main event. This is where the curtain gets pulled all the way back, and you'll just see how much depth, polish, and sheer ambition Grey Dot Software has gone into WMMA6. It is the largest, the longest day, the deepest entries, and the one that day that will tie everything together, settle in, and we are so ready because day 20 is stacked. But before we get into it, let's talk first about the intro. For those who may not know, welcome to the WMMA6 Developers Journal. For those who haven't been with us for previous versions, the purpose of the journal is to reveal all the new features and modifications that will appear within the game so that you know what to expect before release. There will be a new entry every weekday for the next 4 weeks. Before we start with and then there's just the FAQ, which we've already gone into that in a previous video. If you want to take a look at that before we go into what is going to be a very long list of entries, I'm very excited for it. Let's get into it. Some of these I haven't even actually seen myself, but there's a good amount that I have seen. So here we go. Let's get straight into it. We're going to start all the way into number 141, the hiring rules. Companies can now be assigned hiring rules that will govern who they are eligible to sign when under AI control. This tweak allows a better simulation of real-world companies and brings the game in line with TEW. Basically, what this means is that if you don't know about Total Extreme Wrestling, they have rules that govern who can be signed and who can't be signed. For example, in terms of pro wrestling, you could make it so you can only sign luchadors, or you could make it so you are only signing people under 30 years old, or maybe you are only signing people over 30 years old. And there was just a lot of different things that you could put in place of who can be signed and who can't be signed. With WMMA6, I imagine this will be something similar, where it'll be something like you can only sign kickboxers, or maybe you can only sign fighters that have some sort of striking background, or maybe only fighters that have some sort of grappling or wrestling background. And I'm sure another thing too is that only fighters can be signed under 30 years old, or maybe fighters above 30. Or another thing I think could come into place here too is fighters that have a undefeated streak can only be signed, or maybe fighters that have only lost can be signed. I'm sure there's a lot of different things that will go into that, but it is a nice feature that's being added. I'm very happy about it, as it'll be very useful for those who want to be able to it'll be very useful for those who are wanting to get a little bit more realistic with how they want their companies to sign, how they want the computer controlled companies to hire fighters. And it could be something that's useful within fantasy worlds too. I see this being more used within real world universes though, but a very nice addition. But anyways, now we're gonna move on into number 142, AI reality shows. The AI control companies now have the ability to create and run their own reality TV shows. This includes taking over a show that was already in progress when a user left a company. So that's a nice little addition to it, but yeah, there's not really much to explain there. That's kind of self-explanatory right there. And if you don't know what a reality show is, search up The Ultimate Fighter. That's a good explanation of how reality shows work in MMA. But now we've got, for number 143, matchmaking instructions. The matchmaking instructions, formerly booking instructions section, has been expanded, now allowing the user to apply them to the main roster so that they are taken into account when using the assistant to automatically make fights. Additionally, a new section has been added to the roster to allow instructions to be assigned to multiple fighters at once to make things more user-friendly. What this basically means is that in previous games, if you had a child company, you could assign certain fighters to be booked a certain way when being given fights. So, for example, if Chris Cyborg, for some reason, was at a child company to the UFC, they could assign her to only go up against wrestlers, or they could assign her to be, for whatever reason, be built up to be a top gal, even though she already is. But this example, it just makes it so it would be something where they could give instructions for how she's being booked in the child company. But now it's saying that in WMMA6, that can be used for the assistant to book shows as well, meaning that they will use the instructions for that as well, which is a nice addition. And that multiple fighter, but in that multiple fighters can be assigned instructions at once as well, which is another nice thing that's being added. So it's a nice quality of life change there. And I'm very excited for what is to come for that. Now we've got number 144, rivalries. Formerly challenges has been expanded, now dividing up callouts and animosities into separate categories and adding in new, quote, epic rivalries, unquote, category for the very best feuds. Additionally, the screen is now accessible from more places and has been redesigned for ease of use. This is a really nice thing. Basically, this goes further down the road on being able to book fights of things that people are actually going to want to watch, especially the ones that get very dramatic. So, yeah, there is a lot of different things that'll go into that. One of those things being call outs. Sometimes it turns it sometimes other things can turn down into like maybe a fighter hits an illegal move, or a fighter hits something that's very disrespectful, which could lead into a rivalry there as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of really it for uh, rivalries. Coming up next now is number 145, exclusive fighters. By request, each company can be set whether they are allowed to offer exclusive contracts or not when under AI control. Additionally, the minimum size for any AI company to offer exclusive contracts can be set at the era level. This gives database makers a greater degree of control. Normally, you had to be at a high level regional to be able to offer up exclusive contracts to fighters, but this makes it seem like that might be changing. At least for the AI companies. I'm not sure about it. Doesn't say anything about the human controlled companies, the player controlled companies. I assume that might be staying the same, but they also can be set on whether they can or cannot offer exclusive contracts at all, no matter the size of it, too, which is very interesting. But we'll definitely give some very interesting results too, and can make for some very interesting universes. So I'm excited to see where this could go. And number 146, this is contract offer evaluation. But when evaluating the overall value of a contract offer, fighters now will take context into account in a higher degree. In particular, they are better able to avoid being seduced by long-term deals that may not be beneficial to them at the current point in their career, giving a more realistic effect to both contracts and the game world as a whole. I assume this goes into effect for both player-controlled negotiations and for uh, AI-controlled negotiations, but it sounds like they're adding a little bit more realism into what fighter will accept, what contract, or what they'll be more interested in within whatever is going on at that current moment in their career, which is a nice bonus, but nothing too crazy groundbreaking from the sounds of it. Just enhancing the fighters' ability to take a look at and evaluate whether a contract is actually beneficial for them. But moving on to number 147. Generated skill values. By request, the way skill values are assigned to newly generated characters, in particular their striking power and chin strength, has been redone to try and better reflect reality. This includes making it so high-level strikes don't automatically end up with amazing KO powers so often. This is kind of a nice change, but I personally didn't have too many issues with this. But it's nice that they're having a rework for some of the skill values on newly generated characters. But going on to number 148, broadcasting negotiations. As we talk about contract negotiations within fighters, it seems broadcasting negotiations have also been upgraded to be more user-friendly, with rejections happening at the point of sending an offer rather than having to wait for a response. This makes the whole process smoother and quicker. I think more of this, what this means is if a broadcaster is already got like a pay-per-view broadcast, if a company already has a pay-per-view broadcaster and they're trying to sign a deal with a different pay-per-view broadcaster, I think what this is saying is that they'll automatically be like, hey, we can't sign this deal with you because you already have a deal with this other pay-per-view broadcaster, I think is what this means. It's a little confusing for me as well, but if anybody else has if anybody else can explain this better, please let me know, because that would be great. And I would gladly appreciate it. Sorry about that, but going into number 149 is hogging broadcasters. To avoid a situation where a company can, quote, hog, unquote, a broadcaster by signing a deal with them and then simply not using it to ensure that rivals can't get access to him, broadcasters are now able to recognize when a company is not using the deals and will refuse to negotiate further extensions. This means the deals will be freed up and will make things more fair, particularly as there are now time blocks on dealing with broadcasters whom you've recently had expiration on deals with. I'm very glad that this is happening. I'm glad this is being taken into account. And I'm also very happy that we'll be able to, that other companies or even us player controlled companies won't have to, will end up having to use the broadcaster at some point down the line, which, I mean, at that point too, it would also mean that, depending on how long this time length is, some of the companies will also probably just end up going as far down the line as possible But I'm guessing, and then like each time before the broadcasters say, "Hey, we're not going to sign a deal with you," another deal with you, but they might also take that into consideration too. Broadcasters may see that they're trying to do that too and say, "Hey, we see what you're trying to do and we're not going to keep on doing that." That might be something that's going on too. But I guess we'll just have to see how long this length is, and if anything actually gets fixed within that, if it ends up becoming an issue. But I'm sure Grey Dog Software has thought about that too. But now we're going into number 150, which is why I said there is a lot of features. We've got over double what we had from all the other entries. The following is a list in no particular order of the 160 plus features that I didn't have space for in the previous 4 weeks worth of journal entries. So this is going to be very long. So here we go. Owner skill. Owners now have a skill level which exists independently of their reputation. This affects how they perform in their job and thus adds an extra layer of realism to simulations. Not really much to say there. CEO skill. CEOs now have a skill level which exists independently of their reputation as well. This also affects how they perform in their job, and again, for them, adds a layer of realism as well. Again, not much to say there. Editor subsections. To make the game easier to edit, the fighter, company, and broadcaster editors now have subsections that allow the database maker to easily jump into a mini editor for different data types. This makes things quicker and there isn't the need to return to the main editor first. This is actually going to be very useful at a lot of points for a lot of different types of players. I'm very happy about this addition. Financial breakdown. The financial screen has been improved, allowing some sections to be seen in more depth via subtotals. This gives more accuracy to the features given. That is great. I always have been like, what is some of the stuff that's giving us profit, and what is some of the stuff that's costing us money? So I'm glad that this is something that's being taken into consideration too. And I know a lot of content creators have wondered that too. But it's nice that there'll be more of a breakdown into that. Non-fighter pay. Rather than being paid per show, non-fighters are now paid a monthly wage. This changes both how things are realistically, and it will stop companies from hogging commentators that they have no intention of using without having any sort of penalty. I honestly am a little upset about this, but I also think it'll be a nice little addition. That my only complaint with this is that I wish they could have done it so they could have had also non-fighters being paid per show, but maybe also adds in if they aren't being used in a certain period of time, they start requesting to be cut, or maybe they ask for a monthly wage instead. That's my only thing I wish would be happening. And maybe maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but it sounds like it says they're only being paid a monthly wage, which is a little unfortunate. But at the same time, I understand it because I do understand how some people probably were using just signing them to sign them, not really actually going to use them. So I understand it. Show location planning. When adding a new show, the user can now see the details of if there's a new show already coming up in that specified region. Additionally, there is now a planner tool that allows the user to see a variety of stats within these regions. It'll make life easier for those who schedule a lot of shows and are finding it hard to keep track of such. So I very much am happy about this edition. I'm one of those guys that usually likes to throw in a bunch of different fight cards and a bunch of different shows and build up as much as I can. I'm one of those guys that likes to do that because it helps gain popularity and gets us even further down the line at a faster rate than how most companies usually do it. They try to be a little bit more on the conservative side, and I lean more towards the risky side a lot of the time, which ends up working for me most of the time. So there is that. But yeah, I am very happy about this, is my point. And I'm sure a lot of other people are going to be happy about this as well. Founding changes. The way a user can found their own company has been altered. There is no longer a minimum owner reputation requirement, nor does it reduce to 0% upon starting a new company. And the avatar's wealth now comes into play, allowing a donation to be made to boost the company's starting finances. Additionally, the difficulty level now also affects the company's starting image. And this seems to be more of a thing where they kind of added how it is in TEW. And basically what I mean by that is that it seems like they added it for a more an easier way to be able to found a company Um, but um, I don't know. This isn't really going to affect me too much. It might not affect a whole lot of people too much, but at the same time, it's nice that this is being added. That they're thinking, that they thought about it, and that they've made changes to this. So at the same time, but anyways, moving on though, selecting broadcasters. When choosing which broadcasters are going to be airing a show, the two screens used have been redesigned to give the information in a more streamlined and easy to understand format, and a new search facility has been included to make the process more user friendly. Um, I'm get saying this is gonna just have to be more of a find out and see what Adam Ryland means with that, but if it truly is the case, then I glad that that's happening. I generally didn't have very many issues with this, but um, if it does work out the way they wanted it to, then I'm happy for them. Opponent difficulty. By request, the logic that fighters use when deciding whether to object to fighting a specific opponent has been updated to better take into account their respective reputations and popularity, meaning that fighters are smarter at avoiding fights where they would have little to gain, um, which makes things a little bit more challenging for us. But um, I guess it does make things more realistic. I guess. But now we've got owner and CEO pay. Characters of holding a position of power, whether that's the owner or CEO, now have their monthly wage automatically linked to the company's size and can also take a share of any monthly profits. This makes their pay more realistic and helps to stop companies from hoarding money. But that's what made it so great too, bro. It was being able to hoard the money, man. We all want to be rich, man. Come on. You hate us, don't you, Grey Dog Software? But um ultimately it is going but all jokes aside, um I don't really have much else to say about that. Um it'll be interesting to see what exactly that means, but um, I guess cool. But now we've got content sharing. Broadcasters now have new content sharing options to give database makers more flexibility when it comes to modeling reality. Again, that I guess is a wait and see moment because it doesn't really explain that. But absent fighter precision. To make things clearer, accessing the absences screen when making a fight. Uh, when making a fight will automatically display the fighters who aren't available for that specific show. This removes any guesswork or need to manually search to find out why someone doesn't appear for selection. I mean, there was the color coding too within like ranking systems at certain points too, but being able to see a little bit further down the road of why somebody can't be booked for a fight will definitely make things a little bit easier. So I very much am happy that this is being added. Attribute assigning. When assigning attributes to a character, the editor now contains both pre-made templates and the ability to clone someone else's selection. Both of these help make the process quicker, which is a nice quality of life change. Um, so I am happy about this. Backdrop images. Fine, they are bringing in backdrop images. Let's go! To bring the game in line with the TEW series, backdrop images have been added for companies. This allows a custom background to be added behind a fighter's GIF format or GIF format, however you want to say it, picture, rather than just using the standard logo. Hell yes! Let's go! They're actually going to be doing this as a actual feature. I was talking about how I wanted this back too. God, I'm so happy that this is a thing now. And I very much am happy because I called it. I said they were going to be revealing this feature. I said they were going to, and they did. Hell yeah. But now for chin impact. By request, the impact of knockouts on a fighter's chin has been downgraded slightly to avoid situations where veterans end up with really poor chins. Yeah, no, this kind of was an issue. A lot of times the veteran fighters would get knocked down a lot or get knocked out in general a lot. As well, but I'm glad this is being changed up Excuse me. Matchmaking name search. By request, there is now a name search facility on the matchmaking screens to make it easier to find specific fighters. This was a much needed thing that took place. So I'm happy that this is being added. So that way you can select a specific fighter to fight a different specific fighter. By popular request, the matchmaking search facility has been upgraded so that as well as searching specifically for hometown fighters, the user can now search by any specific area or region as well, which is also nice. So that way you could book up a fight that has, for example, only Brazilians, or maybe you could have someone fight where there's only people from the Kanto region fighting each other. So it's a nice little addition that's being added into it. Fighter analysis. When viewing a fighter's history, there is now an analysis button that gives information on their percentages in terms of wins, losses, draws, and their respective finish types. So I am pretty happy about this addition too. It seems to be more of a cosmetic thing, but it's pretty cool that this is being added. And taunts. By request, a selection of specific taunts has been added as potential attributes. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. But quick challenge adding. When adding a new fight to a show, any fight from the challenges screen can now be double clicked to add it directly. This was requested to make matchmaking easier. Yes, 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 yes. Let's go. We are this is a huge addition, because in previous versions you had to kind of hope for the best on what you were getting, but now you can just double click it and you won't have to worry about it. This is very, very nice. Wait fail title fights. To better simulate reality, if a title fight is affected by the champion failing to make weight, then it no longer automatically switches to a non-title fight. Instead, the challenger can still win the title, but it does not count as a title defense if the champion wins, which kind of sucks for the champion, but at the same time, here we are. Matchmaking tags. A fighter's current tags are now displayed on screen when matchmaking. This is a small quality of life change that helps with putting together fights and makes tags more useful than just being used for searching. I never really used the tags in the first place, but this is pretty useful for those who do. So, yeah, not much else to say there for me. Clearer broadcast deals. Broadcast deals have been cleared up, been improved, with satisfaction playing a stronger role. Company owned broadcasters being better taken into account, and more well-defined penalties for failing to fulfill deals. Um, but let's see. This is nice that this is being changed. We're good to see that this is going to be added, because we're adding again more realism into this as well. And a lack of fights. By request, if fighters reach the end of their contract and are disappointed at having had a lack of fights, then they are less likely to accept an extension. There's not much to be said here. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Enhanced character names. In order to provide more realism, the character name section now has additional fields for ethnicity, which is very nice. I'm glad this is also being taken into account, as more characters will now be able to be generated too. More control equals better for everyone. Start game options. When starting a new game, there are now new options. Level playing field, financial equality, and starting company lineup that allow the player to easily manipulate the game world to create some different scenarios. Hoo. This is very exciting. I cannot wait to see how this will turn out for other content creators. I might end up messing around with this too on my own. That'll be exciting. The free picture upgrade. The free pictures editor has been upgraded to match the version from TW9, giving access to mass editing tools as well as easier navigation between pictures. Nice. Improved mass editing. The mass editing tool has been upgraded to give out more options and to be more user-friendly. That's good to see. I'm glad that that's being upgraded. I do like the mass editing feature, especially for those with larger worlds. So this is a nice upgrade. Starting finances. When editing a company's starting finances, the database maker can enter any value rather than being limited to the preset selection. Nice. Very exciting about this as well. And business histories. As a companion to the existing career histories, the game now has business histories that keep track of reigns as owner or CEO. In addition, a new screen is available from the company's staff page, where a history of all that company's owners and CEOs can be found. And the information is also referenced in organic biographies. This, again, seems to be more of a cosmetic thing, but very cool that we'll be able to get to see a little bit more within this. Setting loans. The editor now allows the database maker to set an, quote, on loan from, quote, end of quote, company for added accuracy. I imagine this means a fighter could be set on loan to a different company, or maybe this means like a financial loan on having to pay a different company some money. I'm not really sure exactly what this means, but either way, it should be a nice little addition being added. Delay retirement. When talking to a fighter, the player can now try and persuade them to delay a previously announced plan to retire after their next fight. So, in other words, you could potentially talk a fighter into having a second fight before retiring instead of the very next one. Which is kind of nice. Excuse me. It's kind of nice, but I wonder how many fighters will actually delay their retirement? That's the question. But we'll find out, I guess. Drug failure impact. By request, if a fighter fails a post-fight drug test, then the impact on the company's image now gets worse depending on the profile of the fighter and the size of the company, making it significantly more of an issue if a huge company sees a champion or major contender get caught cheating. Which will definitely add some realism to it as well. It'll probably also affect credibility and stability and the new, probably not stability, but mostly more on like the other two new ones too, like karma and perception. That might be something that's taken into account as well. Fight draw on cards. When viewing a card, the user can now see the draw value of each fight. This can be useful, particularly when matchmaking, to know which are the big matchups. I imagine this means a little bit more like we can see what the draw is without having to click on each fight to know exactly what the draw value is, which is a nice addition. If that is the case, I'm not really sure what this means. I think that's what it means, but either way, it's a nice addition. Stacking suspensions. By request, if a fighter fails more than one drug test at a time, for example, both PEDs and TRT, then the overall suspension will be the two combined rather than being the longest one. Wow, that is a huge change, but a nice one at that, and adds some realism, I think, as well. But now we've got owner and CEO imbalance. The game can now detect when an area has a problematic lack of characters who can be owners or CEOs and react by populating the game world with new characters to fill those gaps. This is definitely an issue, especially for the fantasy worlds. I personally at times had issues going on where there'd be a bunch of companies that came in, but not enough characters that could be an owner or a CEO to fill that role. And you kind of just had to create a character that could do so. And it was a lot of work, and it a lot of times was time, and a lot of times was very time consuming. But now it seems an addition is being added to make it so that the game can kind of just do that on its own, which is nice. Fighter broadcasting skills. By request, newly generated fighters will now have a small chance of having play-by-play and or anchor broadcasting skills. Additionally, fighters who retire now have a chance of developing broadcasting skills so that they could potentially go into broadcasting as a post-competition career. You'll see guys like DC in the UFC who has gone into commentary in the past, and he originally was a fighter. And you'll see other people go into that, into doing stuff like that as well. So I think it's a nice little feature that's being added. It should have already been a thing. It's kind of sad that this is only now becoming a thing, but better late than never, I guess. Major victories. When dealing with a Hall of Fame qualification, quote, major victories, end of quotes, have been expanded to include any fighter who has over 900 ranking points in any weight class. This means that extremely stacked weight classes can be better taken into account. So, yeah, that's kind of nice and a little bit more realistic. Title records. The website now has a title records section that allows the user to see a number of different records relating to title reigns across the game world. Additionally, a similar screen for specific titles or all those owned by a specific company can also be found on title screens, which is another nice thing that's being added. More historic level stuff, which is great, and I cannot wait to see how that will show up as well. You'll get to see more of that kind of title history as well, which is very, very cool. Importing histories. As a quality of life change, the editor now allows the database maker to import partial or full career and business histories for characters. Nice, nice, nice. Optional inductions. If a fighter qualifies for a user-controlled company's Hall of Fame, it is now up to the player to decide whether to activate the induction or not, rather than it being automatic as in previous games. I never really had anything to do with that, so I didn't even know that was a feature that was being added or was a whole thing, because I never really had to do anything in regards to Hall of Fame inductions. But I guess cool that that's being a game, a thing. Not a game, a thing. Oceania. The Australia game area has now been renamed to Oceania in order to bring the game in line with the TW series and to be more clear about New Zealand's presence. Nice. Glad this is being added or changed or upgraded or whatever you want to say. Pro records and recaps. By request, a fighter's pro record at the point the fight happened is now shown on both the recap and replay screens for old fights. This allows the user to get a better sense of how the fighter is compared. Heat and momentum. To make things clearer, heat and momentum are now separate terms that have specific meanings. Previously, they were interchangeable. Nice. The financial estimates screen has been improved, now giving more useful values and giving an on-screen reference list of all active effects that are in play. That's also nice. Death dates. Dates of death are now recorded within a character's file rather than only in their biography text. This allows it to be shown in different places and means that information isn't lost if the biography is altered. Didn't know that was a thing, but I guess good that it's a thing. Character name upgrade. The character name section has been upgraded, both in terms of allowing longer names and also by giving both a record name and a regular name, thus allowing multi-purpose entries. Nice. And potentially will allow more characters to be created, it sounds like. Corporate enhancements. The various corporate items, as well as being expanded to include new versions, can now all be preset via the editor. That is a very nice change, and I will most definitely be doing something within that. Fighter equality. Eras now have a fighter equality setting that allows the database maker to set whether female fighters are eligible to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. This allows for a greater degree of control and historical accuracy. I guess, bro, but I can only really see this being like for historical accuracy. Otherwise, I'm not really sure why this was added. Probably because they're sexist. Better picture selection. When choosing pictures, there is now an on-screen text filter to allow for searching. So that's nice. Improved bonus negotiations. By request, to make negotiations a little more user-friendly, there are now buttons available to quickly increase each bonus offer by 1, 2, 5, or 10. They maybe could have given out a little bit more buttons too, but I am very happy that this is a thing, as it'll be a little bit more of a quality of life upgrade as well. Set all bonuses. By request, when negotiating, there is now a button that allows all the bonuses to be set at the same time, saving the need to address each individually. Nice. Very solid quality of life upgrade there. Rival bid matching. New controls have been included to make it very easy to make an offer that matches a rival's bid. This makes it more user-friendly, as there is no need to memorize amounts. Very solid. No exclusives. By request, a new attribute has been added that stops a fighter from ever accepting exclusive deals. This allows some real-world simulations to be simulated. This kind of goes further on down about how you can make it so exclusives a fighter can refuse to sign an exclusive contract. So, yeah, I figured this would be a feature. Assistant at Add Show. By request, when going to add a new show, the user can now access the matchmaking assistant screen that was previously only available while adding a fight. This allows the user to look at potential fights before committing to creating the show. Very solid addition there. I'll definitely be using that as well. Precise pre-game incidents. Database makers now have a much finer degree of control over when a pre-game incident expires, including the option to use specific dates. This additionally allows return times to be given as a date rather than the number of days, making it easier for the player to plan things out. So, a very nice change there that's being added, and yeah, I'm happy for the database makers. Data check text version. The screen now includes a text version that can be useful for those who want to copy and paste the errors and warnings that they end up receiving, which is solid. Basically what happens in TW, though. Nothing wrong with that, though. Inactive companies. Companies that don't run shows for lengthy periods of time will now receive penalties to their income for things like merchandise and sponsorship. This means that they'll eventually go bankrupt or become available for a sale or to be taken over. Adding a little bit more realism, which is nice. Single-use injuries. For added realism, injuries can now be set to be single-use so that they can only affect each fighter once during their lifetime. So, for example, maybe a fighter has a horrible infection, but it only is single use. In previous versions, that wasn't really the case. It could happen multiple different times, but now it adds some realism into it, making it so that somebody could only have that potential infection only once. I don't know. It was just an example, okay? I know that's not an actual thing that'd be realistic. I was just making an example. Leave me alone. Altering career path. Via eras, the database maker can now alter the default values used for the 4 career path values, whether that's the peak, decline, retirement, and death. This gives an extra degree of control. Free picture options. By request, extra options have been added to free pictures, allowing them to be set by skill level and background in order to give more accurate results. Which I don't really have anything to say about that. Absence sorting. To make the game more user-friendly, the absences screen now allows the list to be sorted either by name or by the expected return date. I'm happy about this change, and I'm happy about how this will affect what players do in getting set for certain fighters or and or when they'll return. So that way they could book fights. Matchmaking order. When matchmaking, clicking the various filters, whether that's by name, by ranking, etc., again, will reverse the order so that the fighters are shown. This was requested by several players to make things quicker. So, a very nice change that's being added there as well. I am not going to really say too much else, but I am going to say, however, that being able to filter out that kind of stuff is pretty nice. Legal costs. Monthly legal costs have been added. As with TEW, these act as a balancing agent to weaken big companies' ability to dominate financially. So basically, cutting away people from becoming monopolies within the world of MMA, which is kind of nice. Up next now, though, is sorting teams by reputation. By request, the teams screen can now be sorted by reputation instead of name if the user chooses. So basically allowing a little bit more control over what somebody does as well, which is kind of nice. Broadcasting contracts. Broadcasting contracts now have the option of being given a random number of remaining episodes. Additionally, the use of unlimited has been slightly reworked to be more user-friendly. I'm not really sure what that means, but cool, I guess. And renaming save games. The load game menu now allows save games to be renamed instead of having to go back and renaming it within the file directory, which is very nice. And also very happy that this is something that will be more user-friendly too, because a lot of people kind of had some sort of changes and they wanted to be able to change the name of the save. I've had a few moments as well where I wanted to change it. So now this is something that'll be a very solid upgrade, I guess. And yeah, weight class sizes. By request, smaller companies will now tend to use slightly smaller weight classes on average in order to avoid situations where they have more fighters than they can realistically use. So yeah, a little bit of a realism change. Um, but also um, just doesn't feel very much like something that needed to be changed. But at the same time, I'm not the one to judge. I'm just digging into these entries. Tag and hype. By request, additional tag and hype buttons are available for members of your roster when viewing their profile. This saves the need to leave the screen and go to either your roster or the specialist tag and or hype screens. Um, so I think what this is a quality of life change. Um, and is a nice little feature that's being added. Picture Pack Assistant. The editor now includes a tool to check that picture packs are installed correctly. This may be of aid to users who are struggling to apply mods properly. And it also is able to where we don't have to worry as much about crashing going on and players wondering what they did wrong. Business specialism. Characters can now have a business specialism, allowing them to either focus on men's or women's MMA if necessary. I'm guessing this might also be a little bit more focused on other things as well. But of course, they wanted to talk about the gender because sexism, am I right? Reality TV recovery. By request, the recuperation times for fighters who have been eliminated from a reality TV show have been reduced to better simulate their willingness to be ready to take potential fights on the season-ending show. So, kind of nice that that's becoming a thing. Improved lineage editing. To aid database makers, the title lineage editor has been upgraded to allow things like automatic naming and the ability to move forward to the next record straight away. And editing pictures and logos. By request, changing the picture or logo via the profile of a fighter company or team is now done by a button rather than clicking on the image itself. This is to stop the issue of the people accidentally clicking it. I didn't really have very many issues, but a nice addition. Corrupt pictures. In order to help users who may be having issues with corrupt picture files, the code quote picture check can be used in the remote help section in order to automatically check for problematic files and flag them up for changing. Easier absence duration. When hovering over an absent fighter on any ranking screen, the return date is now displayed as part of the text. This removes the need to go searching for the information and therefore makes forward planning a little bit easier. So, yeah, a nice quality of life change. And moving forward to expanded team view. When viewing the team's page or a team's profile, champions and top 25 members now have their own lists. This was requested to make it easier to access their profiles, as previously this data was only available via text in a pop-up window. So, very exciting that this is something that's taking place. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that. Picture changers. The section known as agers is now known as picture changers in order to be more accurate. So, more of a cosmetic thing. Rankings during fights. By request, a fighter's rankings are now shown on screen when viewing live and historic fights. This is to give the reader a better sense of where the fighters are in their retrospective careers. So, yeah, very exciting there. Error handling. The game's error handling has been upgraded to match Total Extreme Wrestling's, making it easier to provide fixes for users and reducing the likelihood of files becoming corrupted. Loan out / send away prevention. A new contract term has been added, allowing fighters to have protection against being loaned out or sent away. Adding some realism. Avatar selection. When selecting your avatar, your owner and CEO reputation are now displayed on screen and having the option of insta editing, allowing for a smoother user experience. Larger bonus payments. The maximum size for bonuses, such as Fight of the Night, Performance of the Night, etc., have been increased by request. Now allowing 7-figure sums. Additional schedule. By request, a new event schedule, Enhanced, has been added. This sits as a midpoint between normal and rapid fire, which I'm not really sure what that means, but I guess we'll find out. To be announced / local fighter highlights. When viewing an upcoming show, quote, to be announced and local fighter, quote, end of quotes, are highlighted in a different color. This was requested in order to allow for quicker scanning of a show to identify real fighters and points of interest. And Russian names. By request, Russian has been split off from the Eurasian name category for added realism. So, more cosmetic. Searching for hires. By request, the screens that allowed the user to search by available to hire or available to quick hire has been altered so that these parameters are separate to those for employment status. This allows a greater degree of control over the results. Mod Maker Plus. The Mod Maker Plus facility has been upgraded, allowing the list to be sorted by value and to include the same two list styles as the main editor. This should make using the tool a little bit more user-friendly. Reality achievements. By request, when a reality TV show is abandoned, the competitors will now get achievements that refer to their current status, quarterfinalist, semifinalist, etc., rather than just referring to them as a competitor. Commentary feedback. To be more user-friendly, the user will now be mailed if their commentary team performs poorly. Previously, you would only know this if you kept an eye on the broadcast team section. So, very cool that this is being added. Broadcast range search. By request, you can now search by minimum and maximum broadcaster ranges while in the editors and importer tools. The dirty boxing upgrade. The dirty boxing tactics from the clinch position has been upgraded, both in terms of more commentary possibilities and allowing heavy-handed fighters to do more damage against their opponents, whereas before they were fairly limited. Pay memory. By request, when fighters retire, they now, quote, remember, end of quote, the contracts that they had at that point for a full calendar year afterward. If they then come out of retirement, they will refer to what they were on the point of retirement, meaning that they can't be undercut in negotiations. The fight injury rate. By request, a new option has been added to allow the user to control the rate of injuries within fights. And retirement attributes. To better reflect reality, new attributes have been added to modify how individual fighters approach both retirement and potentially coming out of retirement. Dynamic CEO reputation. To make the game more dynamic, a CEO's reputation can now alter in small increments in relation to whether each show is considered a success or a failure. Previously, their reputation could only change via a company rising or falling in size. Improved comparison. The fighter comparison screen has been upgraded, with it now showing more categories and including icons to highlight stronger and weaker areas. News filter. By request, when opening the news page, it defaults to only showing that year's content, or the previous year's if it's January 1st. This prevents a noticeable loading bump for very long-term games with a lot of stored news. Jump to skills. When viewing a fighter on a roster-style screen, clicking on their mini skill breakdown automatically launches their full skills profile. This is a quality of life change that makes things a little quicker and more intuitive for the player. Sellouts. By request, if a show gets a sellout attendance, it is now recorded in the show's history and shown next to the attendance figure when being displayed to the user. Weight fail randomness. The weight cutting process has been adjusted to have a greater degree of randomness in order to better simulate reality. Acting as a job. By request, the existing part-time actor attributes now have versions for more full-time roles. The difference is that the character is more likely to go on longer absences if they're not part-time. Other sport absences. By request, attributes have been added to simulate pro wrestlers, boxers, and kickboxers, whether near full-time or part-time, like the existing acting versions. This can be used to allow a fighter to take time off to concentrate on other things. Website records. By request, the website's records screen has been upgraded. It now shows a top 10 or 20, depending on the context, for each category rather than just a single item, including more possible categories and allowing searching by company, game area / region, and within a set range of dates. Raises. By request, raises can now be offered to fighters and staff during gameplay without requiring a whole new contract offer. No takedowns. By request, a no takedowns attribute has been added for fighters. Resignation limits. By request, the previous limit on not being able to resign from a company you founded within the first 5 years has been removed. Technical submissions. The technical submission method of finishes has been expanded to give additional information on what type of submission hold was used to trigger it, giving out a little bit more detail when reading / filing in results. Filling in results, my bad. Hiatus control. By request, the frequency of fighters going on hiatus can now be controlled via the options menu. Attribute sorting. To make editing easier, the attribute screen now has on-screen buttons that allow them to be filtered by type. Relocations. By request, a new option has been added that allows players to disable the ability of characters to relocate in order to seek employment. Biography searching. By request, the character editing search has been expanded to allow for isolating those with empty static biographies. This makes it easier to find areas where mass editing to use organic biographies would be appropriate. Nationality groupings. For character names, the nationality groupings has been redone to take into account suggested changes, such as splitting African into English and French flavors and dividing up the Caribbean or Caribbean, however you want to say it, group into 4 based upon the language. Reversing retirements. Fighters are now easier to talk out of retirement, with things that previously would have caused a straight refusal now being able to potentially overcome through financial inducements. Searching by dates. On various roster screens, the user can now search by contract, start, and expiry date. This was requested by many people. Matchmaking search. By request, the matchmaking search has been upgraded. It allows for more options for contract status to give a finer degree of control over the number of fights left and the expiration date. Additionally, when searching by form, there are more options to allow for more accuracy. Excuse me, when trying to find specific subsets of fighters. Bankruptcy amounts. By request, the calculation for deciding how long a company can last in debt before going bankrupt now takes into account the amount of debt on top of how many consecutive months in the red it has been. Generic free pictures. A new setting, Last Resort, has been added to the free pictures section. When used in conjunction with the existing Use Once setting, this effectively allows database makers to create a set of generic pictures for emergency use if the supply of regular pictures dries up over time. Installation help. To assist those who are less confident with computers, the database and skin selection screens have been redesigned to handle incorrectly installed content and gives the user feedback on how to resolve issues. Time contextual commentary. Lots of new commentary has been added that is specific to the action that happens right at the start or the finish of the round. This is purely cosmetic but adds to the immersion. Pre-game ratings. The critical and commercial ratings for pre-game events have been altered so that the database maker can give precise values rather than use ranges. This, in turn, allows for pre-game data to be used in the various records screen. Ranking reductions. By request, fighters who don't fight for extended periods of time have their ranking points penalized, eventually becoming ineligible after 3 years of not fighting. Ranking and additional in-fight injuries. More potential injuries have been added during fights, including taking neck and spine damage. Local shows. The AI matchmaking for local shows have been upgraded to be better about using fighters who have been inactive for long periods of time, helping avoid situations where fighters could end up sitting around waiting for employment. Weight fail reaction. AI companies have been made better at reacting on when a fighter fails weight, being far more willing to change the fighter's weight class to deal with the problem area. Radio shows. The in-game website's radio shows can now be toggled. Disabling them might be useful for those who want to maximize how fast the game loads between days, or those who want to maximize realism in certain databases. Excuse me. Social media. For realism purposes, social media is now only referenced from 2001 onwards. Still no actual social media feature, though, unfortunately. Picture checker. An automatic checker that warns the user about fighters who have pictures that contain non-English characters may cause issues there have been added. Nice. 6-month block removal. Previously, characters would refuse an exclusive deal if they signed a non-exclusive deal with another company within the previous 6 months. By request, this block no longer applies if the company has reached high-level national size or greater. Favorites and underdogs. A new set of attributes have been added that specifically deal with fighters who gain or lose confidence based on whether they're a heavy favorite or a heavy underdog. This adds an extra degree of reality. Induced hiatus returns. The user can now use financial inducements to try and persuade someone to end a hiatus early. Weight differences. By request, if two fighters face off and there is a big weight disparity, then the quote punishment end of quote in how their respective skills are weighed in now greater. This means that a fighter that is larger has a bigger advantage over a much smaller opponent. Ranking ineligibility. By request, fighters are now ineligible to be ranked if they have an ongoing absence, such as an injury or suspension. That would mean that they're going to be / have been inactive for 2 or more years. This stops the rankings from being clogged up with inactive competitors. New business plan. A third business plan, known as mixed, has been added to sit at the midpoint between event-driven and TV-driven. Nice. Very happy about this one. Call-out selection. By request, the code that governs who a fighter is likely to call out has been improved to give more realistic results. Charity. Companies can now give money to charitable causes to boost their image or to try influence people in power. Auto weight class creation. When adding a title, the game now gives you the option of creating a corresponding weight class for the company if there already isn't one. Slicing elbow attribute. By request, a new attribute has been added to increase the chance of fighters throwing slicing elbows from on top to try and cut their opponent. A harder Hall of Fame entry. By request, the definition of a, quote, major victory, end of quotes, in regards to a company's Hall of Fame qualification has been changed from the opponent being in the top 10 to the top 5. This makes getting into the Hall of Fame more of an impressive achievement. Geographical attributes. By request, new attributes have been added to limit a fighter's travel and to affect how they view working for, quote, foreign, end of quote, companies, excuse me. Hype searching. The hype section of the office now has a search facility to make it more user friendly. Searching this list. By request, a search facility has been added to the, quote, what's new in WMMA6, end of quotes, screen to make it more user friendly. User earnings. Also by request, the user's earnings, both overall and with their current avatar, are tracked and can be viewed via the user's stats screen. Weight class names. By request, non-standard weight classes are given their company-specific names in fight histories, provided that the weight class still exists. AI event number filling. The AI now has the ability to go back and, quote, plug the gap, end of quotes, if a numbered event gets canceled by changing the name of existing events so that their numbers reduce by 1. Rivalry flag. By request, when making fights, any active rivalries are now explicitly mentioned on screen. One and done. By request, a new attribute has been added to help simulate the fighters from early days of the sport who tend to only have 1 or 2 fights before retiring. Populating by era. By request, when using the populate tool to add new fighters, the user can now decide the quality by the current era setting rather than having to choose a random or specific setting. Skin installation help. To aid those who may be struggling with proper installation, the screen to change the game's skin now contains a button that will run a check of all the skins and report back on whether they've been correctly set up. Auto show rename. For ease of use, the user can now automatically rename a show directly from the matchmaking screen rather than having to go in and alter the show's details manually. AI company finances. By request, when viewing an AI company's profile, the user can now see their financial position and view the same breakdown screens, which are available via the office for the user's own company. External kickboxing. Eras can now have a named kickboxing league. If filled in, this can be referred in the biographies of generated high-level kickboxers to add an extra hint of immersion. Attendance and gate. By request, the gate receipts for larger companies have been increased significantly by raising the average ticket sale per person. This leads to gate receipts that better reflect modern reality. Excuse me. Spinning kick attribute. By request, a new attribute has been added to specifically increase how often a fighter utilizes spinning kicks. Striking attribute. A new attribute has been added that allows non-strikers to adopt a striking game under certain circumstances. This was requested to reflect real-world situations where 2 ground game specialists who cancel each other out engage in a striking contest instead. Oh, excuse me. Wait, monster. Disqualification categories. The various ways to get disqualified during a fight now have their own separate types rather than all being recorded simply as disqualification. This is useful for fights without associated commentary where it would otherwise not really be clear what happened. Zero prep. A new attribute, no notice, has been added to the career section that allows the simulation of fighters who are willing to appear with no training time at all. This is to aid old school game worlds. Rating terms. For clarity, the scale used to rate fights has been slightly altered to try and make it more intuitive. This is due to some people reporting not being clear about the intended order. Negotiation period. To make the game more realistic, the renegotiation period on contracts now begin when there are 90 days remaining rather than 180 as it used to be. War chests. Excuse me, when AI companies have large war chests available, they will now use them to increase the upper limits on what pay they'll offer in contracts. This allows them to leverage their financial advantage in a realistic manner. Excuse me. Scouting changes. The costs for scouting have been altered slightly to make the team version less open to abuse. Additionally, larger AI companies will utilize scouting as previously they had an advantage over players in that they never had to pay. Character narratives. By request, a new set of narratives have been added to further allow characters to evolve over time. This includes changing their nickname, nationality, personality, and persona. Setup warnings. The data check now has a section that will perform an analysis and flag up any companies or teams that would require a high volume of signings to function. This is to highlight areas that would lead to large load times during the first few months of the game due to possible partially completed database work. Editor character selection. Many of the editor sections no longer use drop-down menus for character selection. Instead of using a selection pop-up, this both vastly reduces loading times when editing and allows the database maker to use search facilities at the same time. Adding historic fights. When adding pre-game fights in the editor, the option for automatic updating of win-loss records and momentum is now available regardless of whether it is being done directly or via the fighter editor. Additionally, a new option to automatically update ranking scores has also been added. These changes make life easier for database makers. You're not wrong there. Affects the company record. By request, fights can be set not to affect the fighter's win-loss records in that specific company, while still affecting their overall record. And last but not least, I know it's been a lot. I told you guys, I warned you. CEO excitement preference. By request, a new CEO attribute has been added that allows them to be more likely to retain fighters who have been in exciting fights, even if they've been losing. So, yeah, seemingly this now officially concludes the quote feature reveal unquote part of the journal. 4 weeks, 20 days, and a mountain of upgrades later, has gone through everything that has changed. So if something didn't show up in these entries, it will likely be the same as in the previous iteration. If a feature didn't make the cut, then it was either not viable or it arrived too late to be included. There is going to be a entry on Monday where there is where we will go through the current state of WMMA6 and we'll discuss the release dates and potential prices as well. If you've been here for the whole journey, though, thank you. And hit that like button in this video. And for more content, hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you don't miss an upcoming episode. And stay sharp, stay focused, and remain the all-stars that you are. Peace out, everyone.